This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the farmers have come here and they have really given us inadequate information. Speaker, is climate change a global concern?
Ask that again.
Is climate change a global concern?
Yes, it's a global
Yes,
concern, and we
it
said
is. Are two heads better than one?
that. No.
Oh my God, okay. Can one man solve a community problem?
Sorry?
Can one man solve a community problem?
Yes.
Oh my Lord, okay. Is there a global challenge that was solved using domestic policies?
Sorry?
Is there a global challenge that was solved using domestic policies?
Yes.
Yes.
Coronavirus.
No, please. Do you believe... Do the developing countries have the funds to facilitate these policies?
Yes, their government can
Yes,
provide.
they do. Are you of the view that developing countries are the major contributors of climate change?
Sorry?
Are you of the view that developing countries are the main contributors of climate change?
No.
No, they are not. Are you aware that developing countries are already suffering debt?
Together even with the
I
developed.
asked a question. Are you aware that developing countries are already suffering debt?
All are suffering.
Okay. Solving climate change requires extensive research. Do you agree?
Sorry?
Solving climate change requires extensive research. Do you agree?
I don't agree.
Oh, you do not agree. Okay. Do developing countries have the capacity to carry out the research needed?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Do you know the procedures of an international conversation?
Ask that again.
Do you know the procedures of international conversations?
Yes.
May you state them? Just one.
One, you have to come up with policies and see
Stop
that
right
members
there.
meet
Stop
that.
right there. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have asked our dear witness, is climate change a global concern? And he said yes. This just goes to show that their farmers are on our side. I asked him, are two heads better than one? He said no. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come from a far background, seeing that when two people come together, they solve a problem easier. I asked him, is climate change a global concern? And he said yes. Why are they telling us that domestic policies which are working in nations are going to solve a global concern? Ladies and gentlemen, a global concern deserves global intervention, deserves global commitment. A global concern is not going to be fixed by one country. I asked him, are you of the view that developing countries are the major contributors of climate change? And he said no. This just goes to show that the developed countries are the ones that are contributing the most to climate change. But these developing countries will not go to our developed country's government and bend them to their rules unless they are given a platform to state their points. These are the international conversations, ladies and gentlemen. The developing countries are going to be given the platform to speak out their grievances to the developed countries that are the main contributors of climate change. I asked him, do developing countries have the capacity to carry out the research needed to solve climate change? And he said yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about developing countries, countries that are depending on loans, grants, donations. These are the countries we are talking about. And then they say they have the capacity to carry out this research. Really, ladies and gentlemen, I, as the fourth negator, and my team stand firm to say that we should take the right road, which is the international conversations. Thank you.
My question number one, do you know that 100 billion US dollars was pledged at the Paris Agreement?
Pardon?
Did you know that the 100 billion dollars was pledged on the Paris Agreement? Was it met?
No.
It was not met. Thank you. Then was it an international conversation? Yes, it was an international conversation.
Okay.
Then, did you say your house is the United Nations?
Yes, and we are using the United Nations as our house.
Yes.
And United Nations Forum on Climate Change
As
Convention.
your body, thank you so much. You can stop there. Does the UN talk about climate change?
Yes, under the United
Is it
Nations
an international
Forum.
conversation?
No.
No, eh? No, thank you so much. Then, are countries in the UN equal?
Yes.
Do you know about veto powers in the UN?
Pardon?
Do you know about countries called veto powers in the UN?
Yes.
What are they?
There are countries that have more power than the rest.
They have?
They have more economic power.
Are they equal in the UN?
More,
Are they equal in the UN? Yes or no? Answer me.
microphone.
Yes. Okay. I'm continuing. Do they have similar voting rights with other countries, the veto powers?
No.
Is that equality?
No.
Wow. Thank you so much. Then, did you say that the developing countries do not have capacity to research?
Yes.
Did you show us where they failed to research?
Yes.
Where did you show us? Tell us more.
That developing countries are suffering debt. They are working with funds that are given by loans, grants, and donations. They do not have the money to facilitate their
so
own
much.
domestic policies.
You can end there. Do you also believe that developing countries have governments?
Pardon?
Do you know that developing countries have governments?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to end there. Dear Judge, resolve. This House believes that developing countries should focus on domestic policies rather than international conversations in the fight against climate change. I'm going to go straight to the question that I've asked Team Negative. Dear Judge, this is where our judgment of this debate is going to start. I'm going to so much based on the question that I asked her. Is the UN an international body? She said yes. I asked for equality, dear Judge. She said they are not equal. Dear Judge, this is where I would want to draw an imperative. The Team Negative is using a house, first of all, whereby they're going to converse in a level where they are not equal. Dear Judge, we are showing you that in the international arena, we are not going to have what? Equality. We are going to see a situation whereby we are going to make policies, we are going to make commitments, but because of inequality, we're going to see self-interest overriding the need to change what? Climate. So, dear Judge, this is where I want you to put your red pen on. Dear Judge, I want to continue with what you asked them. Do you know of veto powers? They said, yes, these are countries with what? High economic power. Dear Judge, I want to show you that indeed, these countries seated in the UN are not here to advance the economic interests of all countries. So, dear Judge, the point that Team Negative has come to say that this team, the United Nations brings countries under equal terms is not going to stand here because they have clearly told us that some countries are more equal than others. So, dear Judge, to show even you that this is really true, in the COP28 summit that they have quoted here, dear Judge, in Saudi Arabia in 2023, the Saudi Energy Minister Abdul Aziz said the country is not ready to phase down fossil fuels. Why did he say that, dear Judge? Dear Judge, this shows you that under these international conversations, these people are conversing, but none of them is ready to really implement what they are talking about. So, dear Judge, Team Negative is blindfolding us. They are coming to continue telling us that they're going to converse. But they have also told us that their plans have worked. But, dear Judge, they have just said it, but we have shown you where they have failed. Copenhagen, Paris, and even the statements that these world leaders have led. So, dear Judge, the team that will win is the one that will show us the difference. I would believe that Team Affirmative will win this debate, and Team Negative will lose even if they want to win.
Domestic policies are easily adaptable, they can be easily exercised, and are easily implementable. The only justification as to right now would be calling on international actors for independent funding of these domestic policies. That one, they clearly win it. And because they tell you that their focus is then only on domestic policies and not shunning out international policies, it means that they draw out arguments such as, if one focuses on domestic policies, when shall they ever adopt international conversations? They've not said no. They simply say, let us focus on domestic policies, but the international ones are at the back of our heads. In fact, when we go there for funding, we will do it. Now, Team Affirmative, you trip yourselves in speech 4. Why is it that the best form of argument in your entire speech is given in the 4th speech? Who of your other speakers spoke about equality on the global stage in terms of negotiability in these international instruments? None.
I want to begin by appreciating both teams for understanding the type of resolution you had. Now, we had a team affirmative that was looking at, let us use domestic policies. Team affirmative advocated for the usage of domestic policies because, one, the element that they are able to handle the grassroots level issues that countries have. Then team negative came up and said, no, let us actually rather only use international conversations. Why? Because of the issue of policy making, meaning they can favor every country using that source of income. They were able to look at the issue of funding and then the issue of implementation. Now, for me, this is where I differed on today's resolution. In any policy where both teams are having up with the policy, the biggest factor I look at, if both teams have been able to give me their policies, I now go to the issue of the House, I go to the issue of the funding. Now, let's first with the House. Team affirmative, yes, I like and I appreciate the fact that you gave us a House, the UNDP. But now you yourselves, you are looking at developing countries. UNDP is an international organization. Yes, even if the fact that these domestic countries might have ratified to it, let me just make it clear from today. An international organization never takes part in the domestic affairs of a country, meaning they cannot instruct the domestic states to implement these laws. All they can do, for example, the UN, the ICC, all they can do is to advise, but then the incumbent countries that are subscribing have an opportunity to ratify or to subscribe or to implement or not. So next time, team affirmative, if you are now talking about developing countries, you can come up with a house that is looking at, or that is focusing at these developing countries that has the jurisdiction. Because if you give a house that does not have the mandate to implement your policy fails. Now, number two. So I gave that one to team negative for the issue of the house. Number three, I went to the issue of funding. Yes, I like the fact that now you were able to justify your funding. You talked about the use of the governments. You said these countries that we are talking about, the developing countries, are having governments that are already in place that can be able to implement these policies. Now, Team Negative came up and said, okay, yes, you are saying these countries are having the governments, but we are looking at developing countries. What is the state of government of developing countries? These are countries that are poverty-stricken. These are countries that are having high debt burdens. Then how are you able to convince us that they will be able to implement the domestic policies that you're advocating for? So personally, I best my debate on that. Because both of you are able to give me the policy. I now want to the issue of the funding. I want to the issue of the house.
This was a very wonderful debate. However, for me, the person that took the day-to-day was the person that gave the best, because looking at our resolution today, at the end of the day, it is saying, in the fight against climate change. So the person that was able to convince me that whatever policy they have come up with will be able to fight climate change is the one that took the day. Now, Team Affirmative comes up and points out the fact that Team Negative, as much as you've given us a wonderful policy, and you're talking about, basing on the fact that you were talking about implementation, which was your biggest point, right? Basing on the fact that it is implementation, they come up and they ask you, yes, looking at your house, as Judge Solomon has mentioned, the United Nations Development Program, I remember in a POI, they ask you, isn't that an international body? Yeah? Then second of all, they ask you about your funding body, which is a question that you do not answer from the start to the end, basing on the fact that you have the burden of proof as Team what? As Team Affirmative. Now, Team Negative takes that in their rebuttals. However, coming on to Team Negative's failures, okay, Team Affirmative comes up and their strategy is basing on the fact that the resolution today has the word focus. So they are not out ruling out international bodies. However, they are focusing on domestic programs, basing on what? On implementation. They come up and tell you, undeniably, international policies are beautiful. They are wonderful. However beautiful they may be at the end of the day, if the problem is implementing those very policies, at the end of the day, we are not going to be able to combat climate change. They come up and they tell you, they mention to you, a domestic policy as easy as the polythene bag ban was not able to be implemented. So how will the international policies that you are bringing about, like carbon filters, like carbon taxes, be implemented? So their entire strategy was embedded in implementation.
something personally I feel like you did not rebut, basing on the fact that you have the burden of rebuttal as team negative. So it is from there that personally for me, I made my decision. For style, I gave both of you 16. For content, I gave Team Affirmative 24 because you lacked in proving to us your funding of your policy, basing on the fact that you were supposed to do what? Your entire thing was basing on implementation. Team Negative, I gave you 25. Strategy, I gave Team Affirmative 24. And Team Negative 22 because Team Affirmative strategy was better than yours, totaling up to 64 for Team Affirmative and 63 for Team Negative. It is not a unanimous decision. It is a decision of 2-1 that Team Affirmative takes that day.